Welcome back to another episode of Infidelity Tales Lab. We're thankful for your continued viewership. Before we begin, tell us, where in the world are you watching from? We love knowing our global reach. Now, let's dive into today's story. Chapter 1. Hidden Cracks. Vincent Hargrove surveyed his custom-built home from the driveway, briefcase in hand. 5,000 square feet of pristine architecture nestled in Baltimore's most exclusive neighborhood. A testament to 15 years of ruthless dominance in medical tech development. At 42, Vincent had built his company, Nexus Bionics, from nothing into a billion-dollar enterprise specializing in cutting-edge prosthetics and implantable medical devices. Daddy, 10-year-old Molly burst through the front door, her auburn hair bouncing as she ran toward him. Vincent's stern expression softened as he caught her. "Careful, princess. You're getting bigger," he said, noticing how much heavier she felt in his arms. His brow furrowed slightly. She'd been gaining weight steadily over the past few months despite no significant changes to her diet or activity. "I made honor roll again," Molly announced proudly. "That's my girl." He set her down, ruffling her hair. "Where's your mother?" As if summoned, Dominique Hargrove appeared in the doorway. At 38, she remained strikingly beautiful, tall, blonde, impeccably dressed in designer clothes that showcased her fitness-sculpted physique. "You're home early," she observed, her voice carrying a hint of surprise rather than welcome. Vincent checked his watch. Board meeting ended ahead of schedule. "Where's Mrs. Patterson?" Their housekeeper usually greeted him at this hour. "I gave her the afternoon off." Dominique's hand went to her neck, adjusting the high collar of her blouse, a nervous tic Vincent had noticed developing recently. Inside, Vincent loosened his tie and scrolled through work emails while Dominique prepared dinner with practiced efficiency. 15 years of marriage had developed a comfortable rhythm between them, though lately, Vincent had sensed something different. Small changes in routine. Late-night text messages Dominique claimed were from her charity committee. Weekend brunches that ran suspiciously long. Dinner conversation revolved around Molly's school achievements. But Vincent couldn't help noticing how his daughter picked at her food despite claiming hunger earlier. "Everything okay, Molly?" he asked, studying her face. "My stomach hurts sometimes," she admitted quietly. "Since when?" Vincent's voice sharpened with concern. "It's just occasional childhood discomfort," Dominique interjected quickly. "Remember how Dr. Fuller said kids her age go through growth spurts?" Vincent looked between them, his instinct for detecting deception, honed through years of corporate negotiations, prickling uncomfortably. "If it persists, we're getting a second opinion." Later that night, Vincent stood at his bedroom window, watching the moonlight reflect off the swimming pool. Behind him, Dominique emerged from the bathroom in silk pajamas, her phone clutched in her hand. "The Westerlys invited us to their fundraiser next weekend," she said, not meeting his eyes. Vincent turned. "Preston Westerly from the hospital board? His wife Adrienne is on the Children's Foundation committee with me." "Convenient," Vincent remarked coldly. Dominique's head snapped up. "What's that supposed to mean?" "Nothing." Vincent watched her face carefully. "Just thinking how entwined our social and professional circles have become." That night, Vincent awoke at 2:17 a.m. to find Dominique's side of the bed empty. Following the soft glow of light downstairs, he paused at the kitchen entrance, listening to his wife's hushed phone conversation. "I can't talk long." "No, he doesn't suspect anything. I know it's risky, but what choice do we have? She's getting worse. I understand the consequences." Vincent retreated silently up the stairs, his mind already calculating possibilities. Whatever Dominique was hiding involved Molly. And if there was one thing Vincent Hargrove never tolerated, it was threats to what belonged to him. Chapter 2. Growing Concerns. By early March, Molly's weight gain had become impossible to ignore. Her previously athletic frame had grown considerably rounder, her once energetic demeanor replaced by lethargy and frequent complaints of stomach pain. "I've scheduled an appointment with Dr. Witten," Vincent announced over breakfast, watching Dominique's reaction carefully. "Pediatric gastroenterologist?" she asked too quickly. "You know who he is?" Vincent's eyes narrowed. Research specialist after Molly mentioned her stomach issues. Dominique stammered. But Dr. Fuller already. Fuller's a general pediatrician. Witten's the best in his field. Vincent cut her off. And I want the best for my daughter. That evening, Vincent accessed Dominique's laptop while she was at her book club, another recent addition to her schedule. Her browser history revealed deleted sections, but Vincent wasn't CEO of a tech company for nothing. Within minutes, he'd recovered fragments of searches related to childhood appetite stimulants, weight gain medications, and side effects of prednisone in children. More troubling was a pattern of communications with Preston Westerly that extended beyond charity work. Emails with vague references to the situation and continuing treatment, alongside meeting arrangements at odd hours. Vincent's investigation was interrupted by the garage door opening. He restored the computer to its previous state and retreated to his home office, where he placed a call to Ronan Sullivan, his company's head of security and former military intelligence officer. Sullivan, I need discreet surveillance on my wife and comprehensive background on Preston Westerly. Personal, professional, everything. And I need the name of the best private investigator in the city. Something serious, boss? Sullivan asked, the only person who could pose such a question to Vincent without repercussion. That depends on what you find. 2 days later, Vincent sat across from Dr. Witten as the specialist examined Molly's test results with growing concern. Mr. Hargrove, these hormone levels are extremely unusual for a child Molly's age, Witten explained, pointing to highlighted numbers. She's showing elevated cortisol, abnormal thyroid function, and several markers that suggest she's been exposed to multiple medications typically prescribed for adults. Meaning, Vincent's voice was dangerously quiet. Someone may be deliberately administering medications, causing these symptoms. Has Molly been taking any supplements? Anything given to her regularly? Vincent thought of the special vitamin smoothies Dominique had started making for Molly each morning. Possibly. We need to run additional tests. And frankly, this may require involving authorities if... Not yet, Vincent interrupted, his mind racing. Document everything, but I need time to handle this, privately. That evening, Vincent watched through the kitchen doorway as Dominique prepared Molly's bedtime snack, a special yogurt parfait she claimed helped with sleep. When Dominique stepped away to answer the door for a package delivery, Vincent quickly swapped the parfait with an identical one he'd prepared earlier, taking the suspicious food for testing. Later, after ensuring Molly was safely asleep, Vincent confronted Dominique in their bedroom. Preston Westerly, he said simply, watching her face drain of color. What's your relationship with him? He's a colleague, she responded weakly. Try again. Vincent's voice remained level, but his eyes had turned to ice. Phone records show 67 calls between you in the past month. His car has been photographed at the Lakeside Motel when you claimed to be at charity events. Want me to continue? Dominique sank onto the bed. It's not what you think. What I think, Vincent said, stepping closer, is that whatever you two are involved in has affected my daughter's health. And that, Dominique, is something I will never forgive. Chapter 3, Breaking Point. The laboratory results arrived via encrypted email the following morning. Molly's yogurt contained traces of multiple prescription medications, corticosteroids, appetite stimulants, and sedatives, a combination that explained her weight gain, lethargy, and stomach pain. Vincent's hands shook with barely controlled rage. Someone was poisoning his daughter, and all evidence pointed to his own wife. Sullivan's investigation had yielded more disturbing connections. Preston Westerly, beyond his position on the hospital board, was conducting unauthorized clinical trials on an experimental weight management protocol for children. His research funding had been quietly revoked 6 months ago for ethical violations, but evidence suggested he'd continued in secret. Vincent made 2 calls, first to his attorney to discuss custody proceedings, then to the private security team he'd assembled. By afternoon, surveillance equipment had been discreetly installed throughout the house. That evening, Vincent maintained a facade of normalcy, informing Dominique he'd be traveling for business the following day. Instead, he monitored the house remotely from a hotel 5 minutes away. The footage revealed Dominique meeting Westerly in the guest house at 11 a.m. Vincent watched with growing fury as they discussed increasing Molly's dosage and accelerating the timeline. The preliminary results are promising, Westerly said, reviewing data on his tablet. At this growth rate, she'll qualify for the trial's final phase in 3 weeks. But the side effects, Dominique protested weakly. She's in pain, Preston. Minor discomfort for groundbreaking research, Westerly dismissed. Think of the children will help once the protocol is approved. Your daughter is helping change medicine. And my stake in the pharmaceutical patent, Dominique asked, secured. Once Brightline Pharmaceuticals acquires my research, we'll both be very wealthy. Your husband's company might dominate prosthetics, but our drug will revolutionize childhood obesity treatment. Vincent had heard enough. He forwarded the footage to his attorney with instructions for immediate action and returned home unexpectedly, finding Dominique alone in the kitchen preparing Molly's lunch. Going somewhere? Vincent asked, noticing the partially packed suitcase in the hallway. Dominique jumped. Vincent, I thought you were in Chicago. Clearly, he replied coldly. Planning a trip with our daughter? Molly needs a change of scenery. The beach house would. Stop lying. Vincent's voice was deadly quiet. I know everything, Dominique. About Westerly, the medications, your plans for Molly. Dominique's expression hardened. You don't understand. This research will help thousands of children. Molly's temporary discomfort serves a greater purpose. You've been poisoning our daughter for profit, Vincent growled, advancing toward her. It's not poison. Dominique snapped. It's control medication under a doctor's supervision. A doctor conducting illegal trials on children, Vincent corrected. Tell me, how much is our daughter's health worth? What's your cut of the patent? Dominique's silence confirmed his worst suspicions. I've already contacted my attorney, Vincent continued. You'll be served with divorce papers tomorrow. As for custody, you can't prove anything, Dominique interrupted. It's my word against yours, and no judge will separate a mother from her child based on unsubstantiated accusations. Vincent smiled coldly. That's where you're wrong. Every medication you've given Molly has been documented and preserved as evidence. Every conversation with Westerly recorded. You're not just losing this marriage, Dominique. You're facing criminal charges. Dominique's face contorted with rage and fear. You bastard. You've always controlled everything, everyone. This was my chance at independence, at creating something important without living in your shadow. By experimenting on our daughter? Vincent's voice rose for the first time. You want independence? You'll have plenty of time for that in prison. That night, Vincent sat beside Molly's bed, watching her fitful sleep and calculating how long it would take for the medications to leave her system. His phone vibrated with a text from Sullivan. Surveillance shows Westerly entering Southgate. Approaching main house, Vincent kissed Molly's forehead and descended the stairs just as the doorbell rang. Preston Westerly stood on the threshold, confidence personified in his bespoke suit and practiced smile. Vincent, unexpected pleasure. Is Dominique available? She's indisposed, Vincent replied evenly. But I've been looking forward to meeting you properly. Perhaps another time, Westerly suggested, suddenly wary. I just needed to drop off some committee documents. At 9 p.m.? I don't think so. Vincent blocked the doorway. I believe we have much to discuss. About my daughter. About your research. About your relationship with my wife. Westerly's professional demeanor faltered. I don't know what Dominique has told you, but she hasn't told me anything, Vincent interrupted. But you will. Every detail of what you've been giving my daughter, why, and who else is involved. Your career and freedom depend on it. As Westerly began stammering excuses, Molly's cry echoed from upstairs, followed by the sound of retching. Vincent bounded up the stairs to find his daughter collapsed on the bathroom floor, pale and trembling. Daddy, she whispered, I don't feel good. Vincent gathered her into his arms, his heart pounding as he felt her burning forehead. Call 911, he shouted downstairs, not caring whether Westerly or Dominique responded. As the ambulance sirens approached, Vincent cradled his semi-conscious daughter, whispering, Hold on, princess. I'll fix this. I promise. Chapter 4. Emergency. The emergency room erupted into controlled chaos as Vincent burst through the doors carrying Molly, her small body limp in his arms. Medical staff swarmed around them, voices urgent but professional as they transferred her to a gurney. 10-year-old female, presenting with sudden onset vomiting, fever, and altered consciousness. The intake nurse rattled off as a doctor rushed forward. She's been experiencing weight gain, stomach pain, and lethargy for months, Vincent added, his usually commanding voice tinged with desperation. She may have been given medications without proper medical supervision. Dr. Laurel Thornfield, the attending physician, shot him a sharp look. What medications? Corticosteroids, appetite stimulants, possibly sedatives. I had samples tested yesterday. Vincent handed over a flash drive. The full lab report is here. Dr. Thornfield's expression darkened as she scanned the information on her tablet. This is consistent with medication poisoning. We need a full tox screen, comprehensive metabolic panel, and liver function tests immediately. And page pediatric intensive care. As they wheeled Molly away, Vincent caught her small hand. I'll be right here, princess. You're going to be okay. In the waiting area, Vincent paced like a caged predator, ignoring the calls flooding his phone from Dominique. Sullivan materialized beside him, his presence solid and reassuring. Boss, Westerly tried to flee after the ambulance left. My team is holding him at the house until police arrive. And Dominique? Also contained. She's demanding lawyers. Vincent nodded grimly. Keep them separated. I want full surveillance on both. If either attempts to contact anyone besides attorneys, I want to know immediately. Hours passed in agonizing slowness. Around midnight, Dr. Thornfield approached, her face grave. Mr. Hargrove, Molly's condition is critical but stabilizing. She's experiencing acute adrenal crisis. Her body's reaction to the abrupt withdrawal of corticosteroids that were apparently being administered regularly, combined with what appears to be an overdose within the last 24 hours. Vincent's blood ran cold. Overdose. The levels in her system are consistent with someone giving her significantly more than the previous doses. Without intervention, it could have been fatal. The implication hit Vincent like physical blow. After their confrontation, Dominique must have given Molly a larger dose, either in panic or deliberate malice. We're implementing appropriate treatment protocols, Dr. Thornfield continued. But Mr. Hargrove, I've had to notify Child Protective Services and the police. Deliberate medication poisoning of a child is a criminal matter. I understand. I want the people responsible prosecuted to the fullest extent, Vincent replied, his voice hard. When can I see her? She's being settled in pediatric ICU. A nurse will take you shortly. But sir, Dr. Thornfield hesitated. Given the circumstances, an officer will need to speak with you as well. Vincent spent the remainder of the night beside Molly's bed, watching the rhythm of her breathing stabilize as medications countered the damage inflicted on her small body. By morning, 2 detectives from Baltimore PD's Special Victims Unit arrived, accompanied by a CPS caseworker. Detective Russell Barlow introduced himself, his weathered face betraying no emotion. Mr. Hargrove, we need to understand exactly what's happened to your daughter. For the next hour, Vincent provided a detailed account, supplemented by the evidence he'd gathered, the lab tests of Molly's food, surveillance footage of Dominique and Westerly's conversations, and documentation from Dr. Witten's examination. You've been thorough, Detective Barlow observed, reviewing the materials. Most parents in your situation wouldn't have the presence of mind or resources to collect this kind of evidence. I protect what's mine, Vincent stated simply. The CPS caseworker, Ms. Daniels, leaned forward. Mr. Hargrove, we need to establish a safety plan for Molly upon discharge. Given the allegations against her mother, my daughter will remain exclusively in my custody, Vincent interrupted. I've already filed emergency papers through my attorney. Nevertheless, we'll need to conduct our own investigation, Ms. Daniels persisted. Investigate all you want, Vincent responded coldly. But my daughter doesn't leave my sight. As morning stretched into afternoon, Molly's condition improved enough for her to regain consciousness. Her first words were confused. Daddy? Where's Mom? Vincent stroked her hair gently. Mom can't be here right now, princess. But I'm not going anywhere. Molly's eyes filled with tears. It was the special smoothies and snacks, wasn't it? The ones that were supposed to make me stronger and healthier. What do you mean, Molly? Vincent asked carefully, aware that Detective Barlow had quietly entered the room. Mom and Dr. Preston said I was special, that I was helping other kids by taking the special medicine. Molly explained, her voice small. But it made my tummy hurt, and I kept getting bigger even though I wasn't eating more. When I told Mom I wanted to stop, she said, her voice faltered. What did she say, sweetheart? Vincent encouraged gently. She said, sometimes we have to do hard things for the greater good. That the medicine would help thousands of children someday, and I should be proud. Molly's face crumpled. But I didn't want to take it anymore, Daddy. It made me feel so sick. Detective Barlow stepped forward. Molly, I'm Detective Barlow. Would it be okay if I asked you a few questions about these special smoothies? As Molly recounted months of being given special foods and supplements, Vincent's phone vibrated with a text from Sullivan. Police have taken Westerly and Dominique into custody. Charges pending. Also, discovered Westerly attempting to delete files from home computer. Data recovery team working now. Vincent excused himself briefly to make a call to his attorney, instructing her to push for the most serious charges possible against both Dominique and Westerly. As he returned to Molly's room, Detective Barlow met him in the hallway. Mr. Hargrove, we're going to need you to come to the station. There's been a development. I'm not leaving my daughter, Vincent stated firmly. Sir, Barlow's voice lowered. The officers at your home discovered something during their search. Your wife is demanding to speak with you immediately. She says it concerns Molly's parentage. Vincent's expression didn't change, but something cold and deadly settled in his eyes. Have the officers bring her here. Whatever she has to say, she can say it in custody with my attorney present. Chapter 5. Shattered Truths. An hour later, Vincent sat in a private conference room at the hospital. His attorney, Marissa, fell beside him. Across the table, Dominique, handcuffed and escorted by an officer, glared at him with a mixture of defiance and desperation. 5 minutes, Detective Barlow announced, and everything said in this room will be recorded. Vincent, Dominique began, her voice attempting warmth that didn't reach her eyes. This has all gone too far. You know I would never deliberately harm Molly. Save it. Vincent cut her off. The evidence is overwhelming. You're facing felony child endangerment charges at minimum, possibly attempted murder after yesterday's overdose. It wasn't an overdose. Dominique protested. Preston said increasing the dosage was necessary to advance your illegal drug trial, to secure your pharmaceutical patent. Vincent's voice remained terrifyingly calm. Detective Barlow mentioned you had something to say about Molly's parentage. Make it quick. Dominique's expression transformed, calculation replacing her feigned contrition. You've always been so certain of everything, Vincent. So confident in your control. But there's something even the great Vincent Hargrove doesn't know. She leaned forward, dropping her voice. Molly isn't your biological daughter. The room went silent. Vincent's face revealed nothing, but Marissa placed a cautioning hand on his arm. Preston and I have been involved for 12 years, Dominique continued, watching for any reaction. Molly is his child, not yours. The DNA will prove it. Vincent studied his wife with a cold assessment he usually reserved for business rivals preparing to be destroyed. Is it your attempt at leverage? You think threatening me with this will somehow mitigate what you've done? It's not a threat. It's a reality you'll have to face in court, Dominique responded. The custody battle changes completely when paternity is disputed, and Preston's research, while perhaps ethically questionable, was conducted with the biological father's consent, which would make Westerly equally culpable. Marissa interjected. Biological relationship or not, he participated in systematically poisoning a child. That's still a felony. Vincent stood abruptly. We're done here. Detective, I'll submit to any DNA test the court requires, but my daughter's medical treatment takes priority over these desperate tactics. As Vincent turned to leave, Dominique called after him. She was never supposed to be harmed. The protocol was safe until... Vincent paused, turning slowly. Until what? Dominique's eyes darted to the detective, then back to Vincent. Until someone tampered with the medication yesterday. The dose I gave her wasn't what caused the collapse. Someone must have switched or contaminated it. Detective Barlow stepped forward. Mrs. Hargrove, are you alleging someone else poisoned your daughter? The medication I've been giving her was carefully measured, Dominique insisted. Whatever caused her collapse yesterday wasn't what I administered. Vincent exchanged glances with Detective Barlow, whose expression remained professionally neutral. We'll investigate all possibilities, Mrs. Hargrove. Now, you'll be transported to central booking for processing. Back in Molly's hospital room, Vincent found Dr. Thornfield reviewing her latest test results. Her numbers are improving, the doctor reported. The emergency treatment protocol is working. If this continues, she could be stable enough for discharge in a few days, though she'll need ongoing care to address the long-term effects of the medications. Whatever she needs, Vincent assured her. I'll arrange for the best specialists. After Dr. Thornfield left, Vincent sat beside Molly's bed, watching her sleep peacefully for the first time in months. His phone vibrated with a message from an unknown number. Package delivered to your office, as requested. Contents may shock you. Dr. M. Vincent recognized the cryptic signature of Dr. Meera Agarwal, the forensic toxicologist he'd engaged privately to analyze the medications found in Molly's system. Whatever she'd discovered had been significant enough to warrant special handling. As evening approached, Detective Barlow returned with news. Mr. Hargrove, we've spoken with the district attorney. Based on the evidence in Molly's statement, they're charging both your wife and Dr. Westerly with first-degree child endangerment, conspiracy to commit fraud, practicing medicine without proper consent, and related charges. And the overdose? Vincent asked pointedly. We're still investigating that aspect, Barlow replied carefully. The timing coincides with your confrontation with Mrs. Hargrove, which suggests possible intentional harm, but we need conclusive evidence. After Barlow left, Vincent called Sullivan. I need you at the hospital now. It's time to accelerate our contingency plans. Sullivan arrived 30 minutes later, bringing a secure laptop and documents requiring Vincent's signature. Everything's arranged as you specified, he reported. Safe house is prepared, security team assembled, and the jet is standing by if needed. Vincent signed the papers authorizing a series of financial maneuvers that would effectively isolate his assets from any claims Dominique might make. What about Westerly's research documents? Our team recovered everything before the police seized his computers, Sullivan confirmed. The data shows they've been running unauthorized trials on at least 7 other children, all with fabricated parental consent forms. Brightline Pharmaceuticals was prepared to pay millions for the protocol once it showed successful results in pediatric subjects. And the parents? Mostly single mothers in financial distress. Westerly offered them cash payments, disguised as study participation stipends. Vincent processed this information coldly. Contact those families anonymously. Make sure they have everything they need to pursue their own legal action against Westerly and Brightline. Sullivan nodded, then hesitated. Boss, about Mrs. Hargrove's claim regarding Molly's paternity. Already handling it, Vincent cut him off. Whether it's true or not is irrelevant. Molly is my daughter in every way that matters. That night, as Molly slept under the watchful eye of a private nurse Vincent had hired, he slipped away to his company headquarters. In his office, he found the package Dr. Agarwal had sent, a sealed forensic envelope and detailed report. The findings confirmed his suspicions. The medication that had caused Molly's collapse contained concentrated amounts of the original drugs, but also traces of a compound typically used in specialized research, a compound manufactured exclusively by a subsidiary of Brightline Pharmaceuticals. More damning was the timing. According to the molecular degradation analysis, this particular combination had been prepared less than 2 hours before Molly consumed it, during the exact time Dominique had been meeting with Westerly in the guest house. Vincent placed a call to Detective Barlow, his voice controlled despite the rage burning inside him. Detective, I have evidence that the overdose was premeditated. I'm sending it to you now. After ending the call, Vincent opened his safe and removed a small flash drive labeled simply contingency. On it was everything he'd need for what came next. The complete destruction of everyone involved in hurting his daughter. Chapter 6. The Unraveling. The following morning brought the arrival of hospital legal counsel and administrators, their faces grave as they requested an urgent meeting with Vincent. "Mr. Hargrove," began Gloria Montgomery, the hospital's chief legal officer, "we've been cooperating fully with the police investigation into Dr. Westerly's activities, and I'm afraid we've uncovered disturbing information that affects your daughter." Vincent sat perfectly still, his expression unreadable. "Go on." "Dr. Westerly was conducting unauthorized trials using an experimental compound developed by Brightline Pharmaceuticals," Montgomery explained. "What we didn't realize until now was the extent of the hospital's potential liability. It appears several administrators may have turned a blind eye to his activities in exchange for research funding." "Names," Vincent demanded. Montgomery hesitated. "That's still part of an ongoing internal investigation, but we wanted to inform you first because—" She slid a document across the table. "This appears to be a consent form with your signature, authorizing Molly's participation in the trial." Vincent examined the document, his jaw tightening imperceptibly. "This signature is forged." "We suspected as much," Montgomery nodded. "Which raises serious questions about how many other consent forms were falsified. The hospital board has authorized me to discuss settlement options with affected families, including yours." Vincent folded the document carefully and placed it in his jacket pocket. "Ms. Montgomery, let me be clear, I'm not interested in a settlement. I intend to see everyone involved in this, from Westerly to the board members who enabled him, face criminal charges and complete professional destruction. Mr. Hargrove, I understand your anger, but litigation could take years." "Then you'd better prepare for a long battle," Vincent interrupted coldly. "My daughter nearly died because your hospital failed in its most basic duty of care. No amount of money will change that, but I will ensure accountability at every level." After Montgomery departed, Vincent received a call from Detective Barlow. "The DA's reviewed the evidence you provided," Barlow informed him. "They're upgrading the charges against both Westerly and your wife to include attempted murder. The timing of the overdose and the specialized compound leaves little doubt about intent." "What about Brightline Pharmaceuticals?" Vincent asked. "Search warrants are being executed at their offices as we speak," Barlow confirmed. "Initial findings suggest executives were aware of Westerly's methods, but deliberately maintained distance to preserve deniability." "Not distance enough," Vincent remarked coldly. By afternoon, Molly had improved enough to sit up and eat solid food. Vincent sat beside her bed, helping her with a cup of applesauce, when his attorney arrived with news. "The judge granted the emergency custody order," Marissa reported quietly. "You have sole legal and physical custody pending the outcome of the criminal proceedings. Dominique's being denied bail due to flight risk and the severity of the charges." "And the paternity issue?" "The court has ordered DNA testing, but regardless of the outcome, her parental rights are likely to be terminated given the circumstances." Marissa hesitated. "Vincent, have you considered how you'll handle this with Molly if Westerly is her biological father?" Vincent finished, his voice low to avoid Molly overhearing. "Nothing changes. She's my daughter, period. I've raised her, loved her, protected her, and I'll continue to do so." That evening, as Molly slept, Vincent received a visit from Adrienne Westerly, Preston's wife. Elegant, even in distress, she requested a private conversation. "I had no idea what Preston was doing," she began once they were alone. "The police have seized everything, our accounts, properties, even my personal belongings as potential evidence. I'm not sure what you expect from me, Mrs. Westerly," Vincent replied coolly. "Information," she said simply. "The police aren't telling me anything. Preston won't speak to me. I need to understand what happened." Vincent studied her carefully. "Your husband was conducting illegal drug trials on children, including my daughter. He conspired with my wife to administer potentially lethal medications to Molly without my knowledge or consent, all for profit and professional recognition." Adrienne paled. "That's not possible. Preston is a respected pediatric researcher. He would never." "The evidence is conclusive," Vincent interrupted. And based on documents recovered from his office, this wasn't his first unauthorized trial. There are records of at least 3 previous studies involving children, all with questionable consent procedures. "Oh God," Adrian whispered, genuine horror crossing her face. "The trials in Atlanta 2 years ago, and before that in Boston. I thought those were legitimate studies." He told me they were revolutionizing childhood medicine. Vincent leaned forward. "What exactly do you know about those studies?" "Only what Preston shared, that they were developing targeted treatments for childhood obesity and related conditions." He was so proud of the results. Her voice faltered. There were complications with some patients, but he said that was normal in clinical research. "Complications," Vincent repeated flatly. "Did these complications include the death of a 7-year-old boy in Boston?" "Jason Mercer. Does that name mean anything to you?" Adrienne's shocked expression answered before she could speak. "A child died?" Preston never mentioned. He told me the Boston study was discontinued due to funding issues. It was discontinued because Jason Mercer suffered fatal liver failure after receiving experimental medications similar to those given to Molly, Vincent informed her coldly. His parents were paid $3 million in a confidential settlement. The records were buried, the case never went public, and Westerly simply moved to a new hospital to continue his research. As the implications settled over her, Adrienne's composure crumbled. "I had investments in Brightline. Preston suggested them as a growth opportunity. Have I been profiting from this?" "Unwittingly or not," Vincent confirmed, "you've benefited from your husband's activities. The question now is what you're prepared to do about it." After a moment of silent deliberation, Adrienne straightened her shoulders. "Everything. I'll tell the prosecutors everything I know, the previous studies, the financial arrangements, the connections to Brightline executives. Preston doesn't deserve protection after what he's done." "A wise decision," Vincent nodded. "Detective Barlow will be interested in your testimony." After Adrienne left, Vincent stood at the window overlooking the hospital parking lot, watching her departure with calculated interest. His phone vibrated with a message from Sullivan. "DNA results in. Confirmation of your instructions requested." Vincent's reply was immediate. "Proceed as planned. All parameters." Later that night, as Vincent kept vigil beside Molly's bed, Dr. Thornfield arrived with updated test results. "Her system is clearing the medications more quickly than expected," the doctor reported with cautious optimism. "Her liver and kidney functions are improving, and the adrenal crisis has been successfully managed. If this trend continues, she could be discharged within 48 hours. To recover where?" Vincent asked. "Our home is still partially a crime scene. I understand you've made alternative arrangements?" Dr. Thornfield inquired. Vincent nodded. "A private property with full medical facilities and security. My team is preparing it now." As morning approached, Vincent received the call he'd been anticipating. Detective Barlow's voice was strained even through the professional demeanor. "Mr. Hargrove, I need you to come to the station immediately." "My daughter." "This can't wait," Barlow interrupted. "It concerns your wife. There's been an incident at the detention center." Chapter 7. Calculated Moves. Vincent entered the police station at precisely 7:30 a.m., his appearance immaculate despite the sleepless night. Detective Barlow escorted him to a private conference room where Captain Eleanor Reese waited, her expression grim. "Mr. Hargrove," she began formally, "at approximately 4:17 this morning, your wife was found unresponsive in her cell. Despite emergency medical intervention, she was pronounced dead at 5:04 a.m. Vincent's face revealed nothing. "Cause? Preliminary indications suggest poisoning," Captain Reese answered, watching him carefully. "Toxicology is pending, but initial symptoms align with ingestion of a compound similar to what was found in your daughter's system, only at a significantly higher concentration." "Are you suggesting a connection?" Vincent asked coolly. "We're investigating all possibilities," Barlow interjected. "Security footage shows no unauthorized access to her cell, and she had no visitors except her attorney yesterday afternoon." "I was at the hospital all night with multiple witnesses," Vincent pointed out. if you're implying involvement on my part. We're simply informing you as next of kin, Captain Reese clarified. However, the timing and method raise obvious questions, especially given recent events. Vincent leaned forward slightly. Captain, my wife conspired to poison my daughter for profit. She betrayed our family in the most fundamental way possible. While I won't pretend to mourn her death, I had nothing to do with it. After answering further questions with practiced precision, Vincent was permitted to leave. Outside the station, Sullivan waited with the car. Everything is proceeding as anticipated, Sullivan reported once they were moving. The safe house is fully prepared. Medical staff have been vetted and secured, and the other matter has been addressed. Vincent nodded. And Westerly, being transferred to county detention this morning following his arraignment. Bail was denied. His reaction to the news about Dominique? Sullivan allowed himself a small smile. Complete breakdown. Demanded protective custody, claiming he'd be next. Perceptive of him, Vincent remarked coldly. Back at the hospital, Vincent found Molly awake and significantly improved. Some color returned to her cheeks as she watched cartoons on the room's television. Daddy, she brightened when he entered. Dr. Thornfield says I might go home soon. Vincent sat beside her, taking her small hand in his. Not home just yet, princess. We're going to stay somewhere special while you finish getting better. A beautiful house by the lake with your own nurse to help you. What about Mom? Molly asked hesitantly. Is she still in trouble? Vincent had prepared for this question, knowing honesty, measured and age-appropriate, was necessary. Molly, something very serious has happened. Your mother became very ill last night, and the doctors weren't able to help her. She's passed away. Molly's eyes widened, tears forming immediately. Mom died? Yes, sweetheart. Vincent gathered her gently into his arms. I'm so sorry. Was it because of this special medicine? The one she and Dr. Preston were giving me? Molly's perception startled him. The police are still figuring that out, Vincent answered carefully. But what's most important now is taking care of you and helping you get better. As Molly processed this information with the complex emotions only a child could experience, grief tangled with confusion and a lingering hurt of betrayal, Vincent held her, providing the stability she desperately needed. Later that afternoon, Dr. Thornfield approved Molly's discharge plan, impressed by the comprehensive medical arrangements Vincent had prepared. You've thought of everything, she observed, reviewing the documentation. The private nursing staff, physical therapy, psychological support. It's exactly what Molly needs for recovery. I protect what's mine, Vincent replied simply. As they prepared for departure, Marissa arrived with updates on the legal proceedings. Brightline Pharmaceuticals executives are being indicted, she reported. The evidence recovered from Westerly's computers in their offices was damning. They knew exactly what he was doing and bankrolled it specifically to circumvent proper clinical trial procedures. And the hospital board members who looked the other way? 3 have resigned already. The hospital is cooperating fully, eager to avoid the public relations disaster and potential criminal charges. Marissa hesitated. There's something else. The DNA results came back. Vincent maintained his composure. And Westerly is not Molly's biological father. Marissa studied his reaction carefully. You are. For the briefest moment, something almost like relief flickered across Vincent's face before his usual control reasserted itself. Dominique's final attempt at leverage, then, unsuccessful like all her others. There's more, Marissa continued. The medical examiner completed the preliminary autopsy on Dominique. The substance that killed her was a concentrated form of the experimental compound from Westerly's research, administered in what appears to be a self-injection. They found a syringe in her cell with her fingerprints exclusively. Suicide, Vincent stated flatly. That's the working theory, yes. Possibly out of remorse, or fear of facing the consequences. Marissa paused. The investigation remains open, but given the evidence, a fitting end, Vincent remarked coldly. She lived by these poisons and died by them. By evening, Vincent and Molly were settled in the lakeside property, an expansive, secluded estate with state-of-the-art security and medical facilities installed in a converted guest wing. As Molly slept under the watchful eye of her private nurse, Vincent received an encrypted call from Sullivan. Phase 2 is complete, Sullivan reported cryptically. Westerly's attorney received the complete documentation packet as arranged. The Boston case files, the Atlanta victims, everything. His reaction? Immediate meeting with prosecutors. He's offering full cooperation in exchange for placement in protective custody and consideration during sentencing. Let him talk, Vincent instructed. Once he's implicated everyone involved at Brightline and the hospital, we move to Phase 3. Over the next 2 weeks, Molly's recovery progressed steadily. The medications cleared from her system, her weight began normalizing, and the psychological counseling helped her process the complex trauma of her mother's betrayal and death. Vincent worked remotely, dividing his time between company operations and orchestrating the systematic destruction of everyone connected to Westerly's research. Each day brought new developments. Brightline stock plummeted as executives were arrested. Hospital administrators faced criminal charges for negligent oversight. Medical licenses were revoked. Careers and reputations disintegrated. Through carefully anonymized channels, Vincent ensured that every family affected by Westerly's previous trials received comprehensive documentation to pursue their own legal action. Class action lawsuits multiplied daily, targeting the deep pockets of the pharmaceutical company and hospital systems that had enabled the research. When Detective Barlow visited the safe house to update them on the investigation, he brought news that Dominique's death had been officially ruled a suicide. The case is closed on that aspect, Barlow informed Vincent. Though questions remain about how she obtained the compound inside a secure facility. Perhaps she had accomplices we haven't identified, Vincent suggested. Or perhaps it was her final attempt to escape justice. Barlow studied him thoughtfully. Perhaps. Westerly continues to cooperate extensively, apparently terrified that he'll meet a similar fate. His testimony has led to 12 additional arrests at Brightline and partnering research facilities. Justice works in unexpected ways, Vincent observed. As Barlow prepared to leave, he paused. Mr. Hargrove, in my 20 years on the force, I've never seen a case unravel so completely, so quickly. Every piece of evidence appearing at precisely the right moment. Every witness coming forward with exactly the right information. The truth has a way of emerging when powerful people can no longer suppress it, Vincent replied smoothly. Indeed, Barlow nodded. Especially when someone knows exactly where to look and who to pressure. Their eyes met in tacit understanding. Barlow recognizing the calculated orchestration behind the case's progression, Vincent acknowledging the detective's awareness without concern. Both men had their own definition of justice, and in this instance, they had aligned sufficiently. Chapter 8. The Reckoning. 3 months after Molly's hospitalization, Preston Westerly sat in the witness box of the federal courtroom, his once commanding presence reduced to a hollow shell. As the star witness for the prosecution, he had spent days detailing the full extent of his crimes, the unauthorized trials, the falsified data, the deliberate endangerment of children, and the deaths he had previously concealed. Vincent observed from the gallery, his face impassive as Westerly described the arrangement with Dominique. Mrs. Hargrove approached me initially, Westerly testified, after a fundraising event where I discussed my research. She expressed interest not just in the medical applications, but in the potential financial returns if the protocol was successful. She suggested Molly as a test subject, claiming the child had been showing early signs of metabolic issues that made her an ideal candidate. And you didn't verify this with her father? The prosecutor asked. Dominique assured me she had full medical authority for Molly. She produced what appeared to be signed consent forms. Westerly swallowed hard. I didn't scrutinize them as carefully as I should have. Let's be clear, Dr. Westerly, the prosecutor pressed. You administered experimental medications to a child without confirming proper parental consent, outside approved clinical protocols, and without proper oversight, correct? Yes, Westerly admitted, his voice barely audible. And this wasn't the first time, was it? Please tell the court about Jason Mercer. As Westerly recounted the death of the 7-year-old boy in Boston, a ripple of shock passed through the courtroom. Vincent's expression remained unchanged, though his eyes never left Westerly's face. Following the day's testimony, Vincent met with federal prosecutors handling the case against Brightline Pharmaceuticals. Their offices had been inundated with evidence. Internal memos, financial records, communications proving executives had knowingly funded Westerly's illegal research with full awareness of his methods. The CEO and chief medical officer will be indicted tomorrow, the lead prosecutor informed Vincent. The evidence your team uncovered is irrefutable. They destroyed lives for profit, Vincent stated coldly. Make sure the charges reflect that. Back at the lakeside property, now their permanent residence after Vincent had sold their former home, Molly was completing a session with her physical therapist. Her recovery had been remarkable. Her weight normalizing, energy returning, and the psychological wounds beginning to heal through consistent therapy. "Dad, watch this," she called as Vincent entered, demonstrating her ability to complete a complex balance exercise that had challenged her for weeks. "Impressive, princess," he smiled, one of the few genuine expressions he reserved exclusively for her. "Dr. Michaels says you're making exceptional progress." After dinner, as they sat on the deck overlooking the lake, Molly grew contemplative. "Dad, is Dr. Preston going to jail for a long time?" Vincent considered how to answer truthfully yet appropriately. "Yes, he is. The judge will decide exactly how long. But he's admitted to doing very bad things to you and other children." Molly nodded slowly. "And Mom helped him." "She did," Vincent confirmed gently. "But that doesn't mean she didn't love you in her own way. But she chose money over me," Molly observed with the painful clarity children sometimes possess. "That's what my therapist says, that sometimes adults make terrible choices even when they should know better." Vincent took her hand. "That's true. But I want you to know that I will always choose you, Molly. Always." Later that night, after Molly had gone to bed, Vincent received a call from Sullivan. "It's done," Sullivan reported. "The transfer is complete. Westerly's commissary account received the deposit as arranged. And the other inmates? Information has been selectively distributed. His protective custody request has been administratively delayed due to overcrowding." Vincent ended the call without further comment. Within hours, news would reach him that Preston Westerly had been brutally attacked in the shower area of the county jail, an unfortunate incident where guards had been inexplicably absent from their posts for precisely 7 minutes. The following day, as Westerly fought for his life in the prison medical ward, Vincent attended a board meeting at Nexus Bionics. His company had emerged unscathed from the scandal, his reputation enhanced by his public stance as a father fighting for justice after his daughter was victimized. "The acquisition of Brightline's research division has been approved," his CFO announced, "at the fire sale price we proposed, given their legal and financial situation." "Excellent," Vincent nodded. "Dismantle their current research programs and integrate any salvageable technologies into our pediatric division. And implement the new Ethics Oversight Committee immediately. I want this company to become the gold standard for research integrity." After the meeting, Vincent's private investigator delivered a final report on the remaining loose ends, individuals tangentially connected to Westerly's schemes who had thus far avoided prosecution. The hospital administrator who approved the initial research space allocation has resigned and relocated to Arizona, the investigator detailed. The lab technician who processed the samples without proper authorization has agreed to testify against remaining Brightline executives. "And Adrian Westerly?" "Yes," Vincent prompted. "She's filed for divorce and changed her name. Currently working at a medical nonprofit in Seattle, completely disconnected from her former life." Vincent considered this information. "Monitor her from a distance. No direct action unless she attempts to profit from her connection to this case." With methodical precision, Vincent had orchestrated the complete dismantling of everyone involved in harming Molly, from Dominique's suspicious death to Westerly's prison accident, from Brightline's corporate implosion to the professional destruction of every enabler. not through impulsive revenge, but through a carefully calculated series of legal maneuvers, strategic information releases, and occasionally, more direct interventions that could never be traced back to him. That evening, as he helped Molly with her science homework, his phone buzzed with a news alert. Preston Westerly had died from complications of his injuries, never having regained consciousness after the attack. Molly noticed the subtle shift in her father's expression. "Is everything okay, Dad?" Vincent set the phone aside. "Everything's fine, Princess. Just work news." He pointed to her assignment. "Now, tell me more about these cell structures you're studying." Chapter 9. New Foundations. 1 year after Molly's hospitalization, Vincent stood at the podium in the grand ballroom of Baltimore's finest hotel, addressing the assembled guests at the inaugural gala for the Hargrove Foundation for Medical Ethics and Child Protection. "We gather tonight not merely to launch a foundation," he began, his commanding presence drawing complete attention, "but to transform how medical research involving children is conducted, monitored, and regulated. What happened to my daughter and other children victimized by unethical practitioners cannot be allowed to happen again." The audience, comprising medical professionals, lawmakers, pharmaceutical executives, and victims' families, listened intently as Vincent outlined the Foundation's ambitious initiatives: independent oversight of pediatric clinical trials, legal advocacy for affected families, scholarships for ethics in medicine, and a whistleblower program that had already exposed 3 unauthorized research operations across the country. "From tragedy, we forge purpose," Vincent concluded. "From betrayal, we build safeguards. And from the darkest chapter of my family's life, we create a legacy of protection for all children." The applause was thunderous, particularly from the families seated in the front row. Parents whose children had been previous victims of Westerly's experiments, now finding justice and purpose through Vincent's methodically constructed support network. Following the speech, Vincent navigated the crowd with practiced ease, accepting congratulations and pledges of support. Among the attendees was Detective Barlow, now promoted to captain following his role in the Westerly case. "Impressive operation you've built," Barlow observed, gesturing to the Foundation's elaborate displays around the ballroom. "From victim to advocate in record time." "Sometimes the most effective advocates are those who understand the cost of failure firsthand," Vincent replied. Barlow's expression turned contemplative. "You know, the investigation into Dominique Hargrove's death was never quite satisfactory to me. Too many convenient coincidences." "Tragic events often involve coincidences, Captain. That's what makes them seem meaningful in retrospect." "Indeed," Barlow nodded slightly. "Just as it's coincidental that everyone who participated in harming your daughter has met with professional ruin, personal destruction, or death." Vincent met his gaze steadily. "Justice works in mysterious ways." "So it seems." Barlow extended his hand. "Congratulations on the Foundation, Mr. Hargrove. I have no doubt it will accomplish exactly what you intended to." The unspoken understanding passed between them. Barlow recognizing the architect behind a perfect revenge, Vincent acknowledging the detective's awareness without concern. Both men had their own moral codes, and in this instance, they had aligned just enough. Later that evening, Vincent returned to the lakeside home where Molly waited with her nanny. At 12, she had recovered fully from her ordeal, though regular therapy continued to help her process the complex emotions surrounding her mother's betrayal and death. "How was your big speech?" she asked, looking up from her book. "Successful," Vincent smiled, sitting beside her. "The Foundation raised over $10 million tonight. That's a lot of kids you'll be able to help," Molly observed thoughtfully. "Mom would have liked that part, I think. Not the way it happened, but that something good came from it." Vincent studied his daughter's face, seeing her remarkable resilience. Despite everything, she had found a way to reconcile the mother who had loved her with the woman who had betrayed her, a complexity Vincent himself had never attempted to resolve regarding Dominique. "Perhaps," he allowed, neither confirming nor contradicting Molly's attempt to find meaning. "Dad," Molly hesitated. "Miss Chambers asked us to write about heroes for English class. I wrote about you." "Me?" Vincent's surprise was genuine. You saved me, Molly said simply. And now you're saving other kids too. That's what heroes do, right? Vincent embraced her, this child who had somehow retained her capacity for love and hope despite experiencing betrayal by those meant to protect her. In that moment, he allowed himself to acknowledge what had driven his methodical campaign of destruction, not merely vengeance, but a fierce, primal need to protect what was his. The following morning, Vincent reviewed the final report from Sullivan on the remaining loose ends. Adrienne Westerly had maintained her new identity successfully, showing no signs of capitalizing on her connection to the case. The last of Brightline's executives had accepted a plea deal, ensuring the company's complete dismantling. And the hospital board members who had enabled Westerly had been permanently barred from medical administration. Is that everything? Vincent asked. One last item, Sullivan reported. The DNA samples from the paternity test, the ones showing you as Molly's biological father. Vincent's expression revealed nothing. What about them? They've been permanently sealed in the court records, as requested. No possibility of future examination or comparison. Vincent nodded slightly. Then we're truly finished. The complete erasure of everyone who threatened my family. Sullivan, who had orchestrated many of the coincidences that had befallen Westerly and his accomplices, understood the unspoken reality. The DNA results that had so conveniently confirmed Vincent as Molly's biological father had been as meticulously arranged as every other aspect of his revenge. Whether Westerly had actually been Molly's father would remain forever unknown. Vincent had ensured that truth, like so many others, was permanently obscured beneath layers of manufactured evidence and strategic intervention. In his world, reality was what he determined it to be, and he had determined that Molly was his daughter in every way that mattered. That afternoon, Vincent took Molly sailing on the lake, watching her laugh as she handled the small craft with growing confidence. Can we invite Zoe next time? She asked, referring to a friend from her new school. Her dad used to sail, but they don't have a boat anymore. Of course, Vincent agreed. Why don't we have her family over for dinner this weekend? As Molly chattered excitedly about her friend, Vincent observed her animated expressions, the spark of joy that had fully returned to her eyes. The child who had collapsed a year ago, poisoned by those meant to protect her, had been replaced by this vibrant, resilient girl, still bearing emotional scars, but healing and thriving under his protection. From the ashes of betrayal, Vincent had crafted not just revenge, but rebirth. He had systematically erased every threat, punished every transgression, and emerged with his position strengthened. The foundation would ensure Westerly's name was forever associated with medical criminality, while the Hargrove name would represent protection and advocacy. In the end, Vincent had done what he always did, protected what was his, destroyed those who threatened it, and turned catastrophe into advantage. Not through emotional outbursts or impulsive actions, but through calculated, meticulous planning that left no loose ends. As the sailboat glided across the lake's surface, Vincent allowed himself the satisfaction of completion. The ledger was balanced. Justice, his justice, had been served. And most importantly, Molly was safe, thriving under the protection of a father whose capacity for ruthlessness was matched only by his devotion to her. The weight of secrets had been lifted, replaced by the foundations of a new beginning. One built on the buried remains of those who had dared to threaten what Vincent Hargrove valued most. And there you have it. Another story comes to an end. What did you think? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoy this story, consider joining our community by subscribing. It means the world to us. For more stories like this one, check out the recommended videos on screen. And I'll see you there. Welcome back to another story on Infidelity Tales Lab. Before we begin, tell us, where in the world are you watching from? Now, let's dive into today's story. Chapter 1, The Foundation. Chad Herman stood in his kitchen, pouring his second cup of coffee as golden morning light filtered through the windows. At 34, he'd built what most would call a good life. A successful career as a senior software engineer, a beautiful home in the suburbs, and 7 years of marriage to Christy. His military intelligence background had translated well into civilian cybersecurity work, though these days his biggest challenges involved debugging code rather than analyzing enemy communications. "I'm heading out," Christy called from the hallway, her heels clicking against the hardwood. She appeared in the doorway, immaculate in a navy business suit, her blonde hair pulled back in a sleek ponytail. "Scott wants the quarterly reports by noon." Chad noticed the way her voice changed when she mentioned her boss. Softer, almost careful. He dismissed it as stress. Christy had been working late frequently since her promotion to senior account manager at Meridian Financial 6 months ago. "Another long day?" he asked, studying her face. "Probably. Don't wait up." She kissed his cheek quickly, already mentally elsewhere, and was gone. Chad heard their neighbor, Dean Fritz, calling out from his driveway as Christy pulled away. Dean was a retired postal worker, a friendly man in his 60s who'd lived on their street for 20 years. Chad stepped outside with his coffee. "Morning, Dean. Early start today." Dean shifted uncomfortably, glancing at Christy's disappearing car. "Chad, can I ask you something? Is your wife working from home these days?" "No, she works at the office." "Why?" Dean's weathered face creased with concern. "It's just, I see her home every afternoon, around 2:30. Her car's in the driveway for an hour or so, then she leaves again. Been happening for a few weeks now." The words hit Chad like cold water. "You sure it's her car?" "Same silver Lexus. Same license plate." Dean looked genuinely troubled. "Look, maybe it's nothing. Maybe she's running home for lunch or something. I just thought, well, if it were me, I want to know." Chad's mind raced, his analytical training kicking in automatically. Christy never mentioned coming home. She always said she ate at her desk or grabbed something with colleagues. "Thanks for telling me, Dean. I appreciate it." Back inside, Chad sat at his kitchen table, fingers drumming against the wood. His phone buzzed, a text from Pete Gaines, his friend from his Army days who now ran a security consulting firm in the city. "Drinks Thursday? Been too long, brother." Chad stared at the message, then at the empty house around him. The logical part of his brain, the part that had earned him commendations in military intelligence, began constructing possibilities, examining patterns. Christy's late nights, her distraction, the way she'd become protective of her phone, her newfound friendship with Scott Walker, the regional VP she reported to. He opened his laptop and pulled up their home security system. They'd installed cameras last year after a string of break-ins in the neighborhood. Front door, back door, driveway. He scrolled through the footage archives, finding Tuesday afternoon. There it was, Christy's Lexus pulling into the driveway at 2:17 p.m. She got out, checking her phone, then walked to the front door. Alone. The timestamp showed she left again at 3:42 p.m. Chad's jaw tightened. He checked Monday. Same pattern. Friday the week before. A rhythm of deception. He'd spent years analyzing intelligence, identifying patterns, predicting behavior. The signs were there, had been there, and he'd missed them because he'd trusted her. Because love made you blind to the obvious. But Chad Herman wasn't the type to act on emotion. When he'd worked intelligence, the key to every operation was information, complete, verified, actionable information. He needed to know exactly what he was dealing with before making any moves. He pulled out his phone and replied to Pete. "Thursday works. Actually, I might need your professional expertise on something. Bring your work brain." Then Chad did something that would have been unthinkable a week ago. He called in sick to work for the first time in 3 years. Tomorrow, he wouldn't leave for the office. Tomorrow, he'd stay home and discover the truth. Chapter 2. The Hidden Truth. Tuesday morning arrived with deceptive normalcy. Chad went through his usual routine: shower, coffee, breakfast. Christy seemed more relaxed than usual, chatting about a new restaurant they should try, mentioning a work trip to Dallas next month. The lies came so easily to her now. "I'll probably be late again," she said, grabbing her briefcase. Scott scheduled a meeting with the Houston clients at 4. Chad nodded, playing his part. "No problem. Be safe." The moment her car disappeared down the street, Chad moved. He'd parked his truck in the garage the night before, closed the door. To anyone watching, the house appeared empty. He set his phone to silent and positioned himself, where he had a clear view of both the front door and the staircase leading to the second floor. The hours crawled. Chad sat in the study adjacent to the living room, hidden from view, but able to see through the partially open door. His military training had taught him patience, how to remain still, alert, focused. He'd once spent 14 hours in a surveillance post in Kandahar. This was nothing. At 2:23 p.m., he heard it, the distinctive purr of Christie's Lexus engine. His pulse quickened, but his breathing remained steady. The front door opened. "Can't do this much longer." Christie's voice drifted in, and she wasn't alone. "Chad's been asking questions about my schedule. So tell him about the Dallas trip. Buy us more time." A male voice. Scott Walker. Chad had met him twice at company events. Tall, athletic build, prematurely silver hair that he wore like a badge of distinction. The kind of man who thought his corner office made him untouchable. "I hate lying to him," Christie said, but her voice lacked conviction. Scott laughed, a sound without warmth. "You've been doing fine so far. Besides, you're not lying. You're protecting him from unnecessary pain until we figure this out." They moved into the living room, and Chad could see them now through the crack in the door. Scott pulled Christie close, and she didn't resist. The kiss that followed was intimate, familiar. Not a first-time indiscretion. This was practiced routine. Chad's hands clenched, but he remained perfectly still. "Observe. Document. React later. When are you telling Martha?" Christie asked, pulling back slightly. "Soon. I'm working on it. These things take time. The prenup custody arrangements for the kids. I need to be strategic." Chad's analytical mind filed that away. Scott had children, a wife at home, and here he was, spinning the same lies to Christie that countless cheaters had used throughout history. "You said that last month," Christie pressed. "And I mean it." Scott's voice took on an edge. "Unless you're getting cold feet? Because that wouldn't be good for anyone, especially you. You know how much I've invested in your career, Christie. Your promotion, the bonuses, those recommendations. I'd hate for people to think you slept your way into that position." The threat was subtle but unmistakable. Chad felt ice form in his veins. This wasn't just an affair. Scott was leveraging Christie's career, manipulating her. Christie stiffened. "That's not fair. I earned everything." "Of course you did," Scott soothed, but his eyes were calculating. "I'm just saying we're in this together. All the way, right?" She nodded slowly, and Chad saw something he hadn't expected. Fear beneath the guilt in his wife's face. Whatever this relationship was, it wasn't equal. Scott had power over her, and he knew it. They headed upstairs. Chad heard the bedroom door close. He could have confronted them then, burst in with righteous anger. But that wasn't how you won wars. You won by understanding your enemy completely, finding their vulnerabilities, then striking with precision. Chad remained in position, using the time to think, to plan. Scott Walker wasn't just a cheater. He was a predator who used his position to manipulate employees. That suggested a pattern. One affair might be a mistake, but this kind of calculated behavior, this was someone who'd done it before. An hour later, he heard movement upstairs. Whispered goodbyes. Christie left first, her Lexus pulling away at 3:38 p.m. 5 minutes later, Scott's black BMW departed. Chad stood slowly, muscles stiff from remaining motionless. He walked upstairs, stood in the bedroom doorway. The bed was unmade, evidence of their betrayal. But instead of rage, he felt something colder, a tactical clarity he hadn't experienced since his military days. He pulled out his phone and texted Pete. "Need to move our meeting to tonight. My place. Bring your discreet investigation toolkit. I've got a target that needs a deep background check." Then he called Drew Schwartz, a private investigator he'd met through work, someone who specialized in corporate malfeasance and personal investigations. "Drew, it's Chad Herman. I need your services. Full surveillance and background on a subject, and I need it fast. Money's not an issue. What are we looking at? Infidelity, possible workplace coercion, and I'm betting a pattern of behavior. The target is Scott Walker, Regional VP at Meridian Financial. I want to know everything. Past relationships, former employees, any complaints, sealed settlements, everything." Drew whistled low. "That's a corporate player. This could get complicated. That's why I'm hiring the best." "And Drew?" Discretion is critical. No one can know I'm digging. Understood. I'll start tonight. Chad ended the call and walked to his home office. He opened his laptop and created a new encrypted folder labeled Project Accountability. Inside, he began documenting everything: dates, times, the footage from today, Dean's observations, screenshots of Christie's calendar, irregularities he'd noticed. He wasn't acting on emotion. He was building a case. And when he had all the pieces, Scott Walker would discover that ruining lives had consequences. Chapter 3. The Architect Emerges. Pete Gaines arrived at 8 p.m. sharp, carrying a tactical case that looked like ordinary luggage. At 46, Pete had transitioned from Army intelligence to private security, but he still carried himself like a soldier, alert, efficient, deadly when necessary. "You look terrible," Pete observed, setting down his case in Chad's home office. "Found out my wife's sleeping with her boss this afternoon. Hid in my own house like a stalker to confirm it." Chad's voice was eerily calm. Pete's expression hardened. "You holding up?" "I'm functional. Emotional breakdown comes later. Right now, I need operational mode." Chad opened his laptop, showing Pete the documented evidence. The target is Scott Walker, VP at Meridian Financial. Married, 2 kids. He's been coercing Christie, using her career as leverage. Pete studied the screen. That's not just an affair. That's workplace exploitation. Exactly. And guys like this don't stop at one victim. I need you to help me find a pattern. What's the endgame here, Chad? Chad met his friend's eyes. Complete destruction. I want his career finished, his marriage exposed, his reputation obliterated. And I want it done systematically, so he knows exactly who did it and why. Pete nodded slowly. "You're talking about war. I'm talking about justice. You in?" "Brother, I've been in since you called." Pete opened his case, revealing sophisticated surveillance equipment. "Let's start with his digital footprint. You got access to their company network. I built their security infrastructure last year as a contractor. Still have administrative backdoors." Chad's fingers flew across the keyboard. "Completely illegal to use them, of course." "Good thing I didn't hear that." Pete pulled up a chair. "What are we looking for?" "Communications. Scott mentioned a prenup, kids, being strategic. I want his emails, his calendar, his text messages if we can get them. And I want information on any female employees who left the company suddenly in the past 5 years. They worked in synchronized silence, the kind that came from years of operational partnership." Chad navigated through Meridian systems while Pete set up monitoring software. "Got something," Pete said after an hour. "Email thread between Scott and HR from 3 years ago. Regina Raymond, former account manager, filed a sexual harassment complaint. It was settled confidentially, sealed. She left with a severance package." Chad's jaw tightened. "Find her. I want to talk to her. There's more. Joni Russo left 2 years ago. Crystal Holden, 18 months ago. All from Scott's department. All sudden departures with sealed settlements. He's been hunting in his own department for years." Chad stood pacing. The company's been covering it up, paying victims to stay quiet. His phone buzzed. Drew Schwartz. "Chad, preliminary reports interesting. Scott Walker has a sealed divorce record from 15 years ago. First wife claimed adultery and psychological abuse in the filing, but it was settled out of court. He remarried 10 years ago to Martha Burt. Comes from money. Family owns a pharmaceutical distribution company. So he married up, needs the wife's money or connections. Gets better. I found a private Instagram account. One of those anonymous ones. User is Truth About SW. Post dating back 6 months, all about Scott Walker being a predator, using his position to manipulate women. Graphic details about his MO, the promises, the threats, the pattern. Chad's mind raced. Can you identify who runs the account? Working on it. But whoever it is, they've been trying to warn people. Posts are mostly ignored, only a few dozen followers. But the information is solid, detailed. Has to be someone who knows him well. Keep digging. And Drew? Find out everything about Martha Walker. Where she goes, who she talks to, her routine. She's going to be a key player. After Pete left at midnight with assignments to track down the former employees, Chad sat alone in his office. The house felt different now, contaminated by betrayal. He pulled up photos from his and Christie's wedding, her smile radiant, his own face full of hope and trust. That man was gone. In his place was someone harder, someone who understood that mercy was for people who deserved it. His phone rang. Unknown number. Is this Chad Herman? A woman's voice, hesitant. Who's asking? My name is Regina Raymond. Pete Gaines tracked me down, said you wanted to talk about Scott Walker. Is it true? Is he doing it again? Chad's hand tightened on the phone. Yes. A bitter laugh. Of course he is. Who's the victim this time? My wife. Silence. Then, softly, I'm sorry. I tried to stop him, you know. Reported him, filed complaints. They buried it. Paid me to disappear. I was 26, needed the money, scared of what he'd do to my career. I took the settlement and stayed quiet. I'm not interested in staying quiet, Chad said. And I'm not taking settlements. I'm interested in making sure he never does this to anyone else. What do you need from me? Everything. Your story, documentation, anything you kept. And I need you to connect me with Joni Russo and Crystal Holden. I'm betting you all know each other. We do. Victims of the same predator tend to find each other. But the NDAs won't matter when this is over. Scott Walker broke your lives. I'm going to return the favor. But I need ammunition. Will you help me? Another pause. Yes. God, yes. What's the plan? Chad smiled, but held no warmth. I'm going to give him exactly what he deserves. But first, I need to finish gathering intelligence. Can you meet me tomorrow? Bring anything you have. Emails, text messages, records. Don't worry about the NDAs. When I'm done, his lawyers will be too busy defending him in criminal court to worry about civil violations. Criminal court? Scott Walker's been using his position to coerce employees into sexual relationships. That's not just an HR problem, Regina. In many jurisdictions, that's sexual assault by coercion, and workplace intimidation, and fraud. If he promised career advancement, he couldn't or wouldn't deliver. I'm going to make sure every relevant authority knows about it. He could hear the hope in her voice. You can really do this? I spent 10 years in military intelligence. I know how to build an airtight case, how to leverage information, how to destroy targets. Scott Walker made a critical mistake. He threatened someone I love. He's about to learn what happens when you make an enemy of someone who knows how to fight back. After the call ended, Chad opened his encrypted folder and created a new document. Operation Reckoning. Phase 1 complete. Below it, he began outlining the next steps. He had the evidence of the affair. He had testimony from previous victims. He had access to corporate communications. And he had the skills to orchestrate a takedown that would be both legal and devastating. Scott Walker had used his power to manipulate vulnerable people. Now Chad would use knowledge, strategy, and patience to dismantle everything Scott had built. The game had begun, and this time, the predator had become the prey. Chapter 4. The pattern revealed. The coffee shop was deliberately public, neutral ground where Regina Raymond could feel safe. Chad arrived early, positioning himself where he could see the entrance. At 31, Regina had rebuilt her career at a smaller firm. But Pete's research showed she'd never fully recovered from her time at Meridian. Her trajectory had flatlined after leaving, years of potential wasted because one man couldn't keep his abuse of power in check. She arrived at exactly 10 a.m., looking around nervously before spotting Chad. Medium height, dark hair pulled back, professional but guarded. The wariness in her eyes spoke of hard-earned survival instincts. "Thank you for coming," Chad said as she sat down. "I almost didn't." She wrapped her hands around her coffee cup. "The NDA, the fear, it doesn't just go away. But Pete said you were serious about stopping him. Dead serious. Tell me what happened." Regina took a breath. "I was 25 when I started at Meridian. Scott was my supervisor. Charming, attentive, made me feel special. It started small. Compliments, lunch meetings that ran long, texts after hours. By the time I realized what was happening, I was in too deep. How long did it last? 6 months. He promised me a senior position, said he was leaving his wife, all the classic lines. But when I tried to end it, he changed. Threatened to fire me, said I'd seduced him and he'd make sure everyone knew. So my career would be over." Her voice cracked. I was terrified, so I went to HR, and they buried it. Worse, they made me feel like I was the problem. Said there was no evidence of coercion, that it appeared to be a consensual relationship that had soured. Scott's version, that I was a scorned woman making false accusations, became the official story. They offered me 6 months' salary and a strict NDA. I took it because I had student loans, rent, and no other job lined up. Chad's expression remained neutral, but inside, rage burned cold and focused. Did you keep anything? Texts, emails. Regina pulled out a flash drive. Everything. I knew someday someone would need to see it. The texts where he promised promotions. The emails with implied threats. Voice messages where he's clearly manipulating me. And the HR communications showing they knew and chose to protect him. Why didn't you go to the police? And say what? My boss and I had a relationship, and he was mean when it ended? The texts are suggestive, but not explicit about the coercion. His lawyers would have destroyed me. I was a junior employee, he was a VP. No one would have believed me. She met his eyes. But if there are others, if we can show a pattern, there are others. Joni Russo and Crystal Holden. And now my wife. God, I'm sorry. How much does she know about his history? Nothing. She thinks she's special, that he's leaving his wife for her. She doesn't know she's just the latest conquest. Regina shook her head bitterly. That's his playbook. Make them feel unique while dangling career advancement. And if they resist or try to leave, the threats come out. Does your wife know you're aware? Not yet. I'm gathering everything first. When I move, it'll be comprehensive. What's your plan? Chad leaned forward. Scott has been protected by corporate structure and NDAs. But if I can gather enough evidence, enough testimony, I can go beyond civil complaints. Coercion in a workplace relationship can constitute sexual harassment under federal law, possibly assault depending on the jurisdiction. The company's pattern of covering it up suggests systematic violation of employment law. And if I can prove fraud, promises of advancement he never intended to keep, that opens other legal avenues. You're not just going after him. You're going after the company too. Meridian enabled him. They chose their VP over justice. Yes, they're complicit. Chad's voice was steel. But I need Joni and Crystal willing to testify. Can you set up a meeting? I'll try. But they're scared, Chad. We all are. Scott has power, money, lawyers. So did a lot of targets I took down overseas. Power is only effective if you know it's coming. I'm going to hit him from angles he won't see until it's too late. Chad stood. Make that meeting happen. And Regina? This time, you're not alone. That evening, Chad sat across from Pete Gaines in his office, the flash drive from Regina connected to his laptop. This is damning, Pete said, scrolling through messages. Clear quid pro quo. Play along and you'll get the promotion. Don't make this difficult or things will get complicated for you. He's not even subtle. Arrogance. He's gotten away with it so long. He stopped being careful. Chad pulled up another document. Drew sent over Scott's financial records. He has access through public records and some creative research. Scott's leveraged to the hilt. Big house, expensive cars, private school for the kids. He's living on credit and his wife's family money. So if the wife leaves, his lifestyle collapses. The prenup Drew found gives Martha most of the assets if he commits adultery. Scott's entire existence depends on keeping his marriage intact while he plays predator at work. Pete leaned back. You're not just planning to expose him. You're planning to dismantle his entire life. He dismantled Regina's career, traumatized Crystal and Joni, and manipulated my wife using her job security. Fair's fair. What about Christy? She's not innocent here. Chad's jaw tightened. She's a victim who became complicit. Scott manipulated her, but she still made choices. She'll face consequences. I'm not protecting her from this. But my priority is the predator, not the prey he groomed. His phone buzzed. Regina. Joni and Crystal agreed to meet. Tomorrow, 7 p.m. at my place. They're terrified, but angry enough to try. Chad, be prepared. Their stories are worse than mine. Worse how? Crystal was 19, an intern. Joni had just gotten divorced, was vulnerable. He picks targets who are easy to manipulate, then uses increasingly aggressive tactics. With Crystal, Regina's voice faltered. Just be prepared. The call ended. Pete watched Chad's expression darken. This guy's a monster, Pete said quietly. Monsters can be killed. You just need to know where to aim. Chad opened a new document. Here's the plan. Phase 1 is gathering evidence. Done. Phase 2 is building the coalition. In progress. Phase 3 is the exposure, timed and coordinated for maximum impact. And Phase 4, revenge. Justice. There's a difference. Revenge is emotional. Justice is calculated. Chad's eyes were hard. I'm going to make sure Scott Walker faces every consequence he's avoided, that Meridian Financial answers for its complicity, and that no one else becomes his victim. And I'm going to do it so thoroughly, so systematically, that he'll never recover. And your wife? Chad was silent for a moment. Christy made her choices. When this is over, she'll have to live with them. But I won't let her be defined by Scott Walker's manipulation. She gets a chance to rebuild. Him? He gets exactly what he deserves. Nothing less, nothing more. Pete nodded slowly. You're not the same guy I served with. That Chad would have just beat the hell out of him and called it done. That Chad trusted the world to be fair. This one knows better. This one understands that real victory comes from dismantling your enemy so completely they can't rise again. Chad closed his laptop. Tomorrow we meet the others. Then we start Phase 3. What's Phase 3? Chad smiled, cold, calculated, dangerous. We introduce Scott Walker to his past. All of it. At once. In front of everyone who matters. Chapter 5, The Coalition. Regina Raymond's apartment was modest, but comfortable. A space that felt like a fortress, secure and private. When Chad arrived with Pete, Joni Russo and Crystal Holden were already there, both women visibly tense. Joni was 32, with sharp features and exhausted eyes. Crystal, now 23, looked younger, still carrying the wounded vulnerability of someone whose trust had been shattered early. Thank you all for coming, Chad said, taking a seat across from them. I know this is difficult, but I need you to understand. I'm not here to sensationalize your pain or to exploit your stories. I'm here to stop Scott Walker permanently, and I need your help to do it. Regina said you're the husband, Joni said, her voice carrying an edge of skepticism. The latest victim's husband. Why should we trust that you won't just handle this privately and leave the rest of us exposed? Because private settlements are how he survived this long. This isn't about revenge for my marriage, though I won't lie, that's part of it. This is about making sure he never does this again. Chad opened his laptop, turning it to show them. I've spent the last 48 hours building a case. Not just evidence of affairs, but documentation of systemic coercion, abuse of power, and corporate complicity. I have Regina's evidence, HR communications, financial records showing sealed settlements, and testimony from 3 victims. If you're willing, I can make this for. Crystal spoke for the first time, her voice quiet but firm. What makes you think this will work? We tried. We filed complaints. We were erased. Because you were alone, isolated, forced into silence by NDAs and fear. But 4 victims, documented pattern of behavior, evidence of corporate cover-up, that's not an HR problem anymore. That's criminal investigation territory. That's a media firestorm. That's the kind of case that ends careers and brings down executives. You're talking about going public, Joni said. Strategically, yes, but not recklessly. I'm talking about coordinating with employment attorneys who specialize in workplace harassment, filing complaints with the EEOC, potentially involving state investigators, and timing the public exposure to coincide with legal action so you're protected. Regina leaned forward. Walk us through it. What exactly is the plan? Chad pulled up a detailed timeline. Phase 3 begins with legal mobilization. Tomorrow, I meet with Terry Greer, an employment attorney who specializes in hostile workplace cases and has successfully sued major corporations. She'll review all evidence and file a joint complaint with the EEOC on behalf of all victims. The complaint will include allegations of quid pro quo harassment, hostile work environment, and corporate negligence. The NDAs, Crystal started, are likely unenforceable in cases of illegal activity. Terry will argue that the NDAs were used to cover up ongoing criminal behavior, which voids them. And even if Meridian tries to enforce them, the penalties pale compared to what they'll face if this goes public without legal cover. What about Scott's wife? Joni asked. Regina mentioned you've been researching her. Martha Walker is key. Drew's surveillance shows she's active in several charitable organizations, particularly ones focused on women's empowerment. Her family's pharmaceutical company has a public ethics board. She's not just a spouse. She's a person whose reputation and values are incompatible with what her husband's been doing. Pete spoke up. We've also confirmed that Martha's family business is currently negotiating a major hospital contract. Any scandal involving family members could jeopardize it. She has strong motivation to distance herself from Scott once she knows the truth. You're going to tell her, Regina realized. At the right moment. After legal proceedings are initiated, after she's been briefed by attorneys representing the victims. She needs to understand this isn't gossip or rumor. It's documented fact, corroborated testimony, and imminent legal action. Chad's expression was intense. Martha Walker doesn't strike me as someone who'll stand by a predator when given the full truth, especially when that truth threatens her family's business. Crystal wrapped her arms around herself. What he did to me? I was an intern, 19 years old. He cornered me in his office after hours, said my performance review would reflect my willingness to be a team player. When I tried to refuse, he reminded me that I needed his recommendation for graduation credit. Without it, I wouldn't graduate on time. The room fell silent. Chad's hands clenched, but his voice remained controlled. Did you document any of it? I kept a journal. Detailed entries about every interaction, every threat, every time She couldn't finish. I was too scared to use it. Thought no one would believe me. I believe you. We all do. Chad made a note. That journal is evidence. Personal contemporaneous documentation carries significant weight in court. Joni's term was harder. I'd just gotten divorced. Single mom, desperate to keep my job. Scott presented himself as supportive, understanding. It became physical fast. Then he started making demands, availability after hours, lying to his wife about work trips that were really hotel rooms. When I tried to end it, he threatened to tell my ex-husband I was sleeping around, said he'd make sure I lost custody of my daughter. Tears formed in her eyes. I stayed for 3 more months before I couldn't take it anymore. HR gave me the same treatment as Regina, sealed settlement, NDA, erasure. And you've been living with that for 2 years, Chad said softly. Every day, wondering if I should have fought harder, reported him to police something. But I was terrified. He had all the power. Not anymore. Now we have the power of truth, documentation, and collective testimony. Chad looked at each woman. I need you to be brave one more time. Give me your evidence, your journals, your records. Trust Terry Greer to build the legal case. And when the time comes, stand together in testimony. What about your wife? Crystal asked. She's with him now, right? Doesn't she deserve to know what she's involved with? Chad's expression darkened. Christy will learn the truth. But timing matters. If I reveal everything to her now, she might warn Scott, give him time to destroy evidence or prepare a defense. She's still under his influence, still believes his lies. I need him isolated, exposed before she can interfere. That's cold, Joni observed. That's tactical. My marriage is over. I accepted that the moment I watch her bring him into our home. But I won't let sentiment compromise the operation. When Scott falls, he falls completely. Christy will have to deal with the aftermath. Regina studied him carefully. You're not doing this just for revenge, are you? There's something else. Chad was quiet for a moment. My last year in the military, I worked a case involving an officer who'd been sexually assaulting enlisted soldiers. He'd been doing it for years, using his rank to silence victims. We built the case, gathered testimony, did everything right. But the brass decided it was easier to quietly transfer him than deal with the scandal. Those victims never got justice. He never faced consequences. His eyes were hard. I won't let that happen again. Not when I have the power to stop it. The room was heavy with shared understanding. These were people who'd been failed by institutions designed to protect them. Now they were taking power back. I'm in, Regina said firmly. Me too, Joni added. Crystal nodded, tears streaming down her face. I want him to pay for what he did. To all of us. Then we move forward together. Chad pulled out consent forms Terry had prepared. These authorize the attorney to represent you jointly, to share evidence among the group, and to coordinate legal action. Sign them, and tomorrow we file with the EEOC. Within 72 hours, Scott Walker will be under federal investigation. As each woman signed, Pete pulled Chad aside. What about the wife confrontation? When does that happen? Martha Walker gets briefed by Terry first, presented with irrefutable evidence. Then I'll meet with her personally, show her surveillance footage of Scott entering my house with Christy. She'll see him as both a cheating husband and a predator who used his position to manipulate my wife. Two betrayals at once, personal and moral. You're betting she'll turn on him. I'm betting she'll protect herself and her family's interests. Love might make her forgive infidelity. But documented predation, illegal coercion, a pattern of behavior that threatens her family's business and reputation, that she can't ignore. And when Martha confronts Scott, Chad's smile was predatory. That's when the dominoes really start falling. Scott's carefully constructed life, his marriage, his reputation, his sense of control, it all crumbles at once. And while he's dealing with that chaos, the EEOC complaint becomes public, the victims come forward, and Meridian scrambles to contain a scandal that will destroy their credibility. Complete systematic destruction. He taught his victims that power means controlling information, using fear, isolating people. I'm teaching him that real power is knowing when and how to reveal everything at once. Chad looked back at the women, signing forms that would change their lives. They deserve to see him fall. They deserve justice. And they're going to get it. Chapter 6. The Reveal. Chad sat in his living room when Christy came home Thursday evening, a glass of whiskey untouched on the table beside him. 7 p.m. She was on time for once, probably because they'd planned to have dinner together. Hey, sorry I'm late, she started, then saw his expression. What's wrong? Sit down, Christy. Something in his tone made her freeze. Chad, what's going on? I know about Scott. I've known for days. The color drained from her face. She opened her mouth, closed it, then sank onto the chair across from him. Ow! Dean Fritz noticed your car here in the afternoons. Tuesday, I stayed home and watched you bring Scott into our house, into our bedroom. His voice was eerily calm, devoid of emotion. I heard him threaten to ruin your career if you didn't stay compliant. I heard the manipulation, the coercion. All of it. Christy's hands trembled. Chad, please, let me explain. Save it. I don't care about explanations or excuses. I care about facts. You've been having an affair with your boss for months. He's been using your career advancement as leverage. And you've been lying to me every single day. Tears streamed down her face. It wasn't supposed to be like this. It started as just attention, someone who noticed me, appreciated me. Then it became more, and by the time I realized what was happening, I was in too deep. He said he'd leave Martha, that we'd be together. He's been telling that same lie to women for years. Chad pulled out his laptop, turned it to show her Regina Raymond's testimony. Meet Regina, one of Scott's previous victims. She heard the same promises. So did Joni Russo. And Crystal Holden, who was 19 when Scott coerced her into a relationship by threatening her graduation. Christy's face went white as she read. No, Scott wouldn't. Scott did. Repeatedly. You're not special, Christy. You're not his great love. You're his latest conquest, another employee he manipulated using the power dynamic. And when he's done with you, or when you become inconvenient, he'll discard you like all the others. She looked shattered, reality crashing down. I didn't know. I swear, I didn't know about the others. Would it have mattered? You still made choices. You still brought him into our home, into our bed. Why was it worth thinking you were the person I married? Chad stood, walked to the window. But here's what you really don't know. The women Scott victimized? They're filing a joint EEOC complaint tomorrow. Federal investigation into workplace sexual harassment and coercion. Meridian Financial is about to be caught in a massive scandal, and Scott Walker is going to be the center of it. Oh my God. And Martha Walker is being briefed by an employment attorney right now about her husband's history. She's seeing evidence of his affairs, his coercion, his pattern of predatory behavior, including surveillance footage of him entering this house with you. Christy looked like she might be sick. You're destroying him. I'm revealing him. There's a difference. Scott destroyed himself through years of abusing power. I'm just making sure everyone sees what he really is. Chad turned back to her. The question is, what are you going to do? What do you mean? You have a choice. You can stand by Scott, try to warn him, be complicit in his defense. Or you can cooperate with the investigation, provide testimony about his coercion tactics, help ensure he faces consequences. Either way, our marriage is over. But one path lets you rebuild with some integrity intact. You want me to testify against him? I want you to tell the truth about how it started, the promises he made, the ways he used your career advancement to maintain control. Because that pattern is what proves this isn't just infidelity, it's systematic abuse of power. Christy buried her face in her hands. My career is over either way. When this comes out, everyone will know that you were manipulated by a predator who had power over your professional life. The other women are stepping forward publicly. You don't have to be defined by this, Christy, but you do have to choose a side. Some choice. Destroy myself publicly or protect a man who lied to me. You'll destroy yourself more by trying to protect him. The evidence is overwhelming. Scott's going down, with or without your testimony. The question is whether you go down with him as an enabler or emerge as another victim who found the courage to speak truth. She looked up at him, mascara streaking her face. What happens to us? There is no us. Not anymore. You made sure of that when you chose him. Chad's voice finally cracked with emotion. 7 years, Christy. 7 years, I trusted you, built a life with you, believed in us. And you threw it away for a predator who was using you like a disposable asset. I'm sorry. I know that's not enough, but I'm sorry. Sorry doesn't rebuild trust. Sorry doesn't erase what I saw in our bedroom. Sorry is just a word you use when you get caught. He grabbed his jacket. I'm staying at Pete's. You have until tomorrow morning to decide. Either call Terry Greer and schedule testimony, or don't. But understand, when this breaks, and it will break very soon, your choice will define what happens next. Where are you going? To finish what I started. Tomorrow, Martha Walker learns everything. Then the EEOC complaint goes public. Then Meridian's board gets a full briefing on their VP's criminal behavior. By Saturday, Scott Walker's entire world will have collapsed. He paused at the door. You can be part of the solution or part of his destruction. Choose wisely. He left her there, crying in the living room of the house they'd shared. There was no satisfaction in her pain, no joy in her realization. Just the cold understanding that some betrayals couldn't be forgiven, some trust couldn't be rebuilt. Phase 3 was in motion. And tomorrow, Scott Walker would learn what it felt like to have everything stripped away. Martha Walker's attorney, Iris Rogers, had arranged the meeting at her downtown office. High floor, expensive view, the kind of power space that declared authority. Martha arrived at 9 a.m. sharp, elegant in a tailored suit, her expression composed but curious. Iris made introductions. Martha, this is Terry Greer, employment attorney, and Chad Herman. They have information regarding your husband that requires your immediate attention. This is about Scott? Martha's composure flickered. What's happened? Terry opened her briefcase. Mrs. Walker, what I'm about to show you is disturbing. I represent 4 women who have filed federal complaints against your husband for workplace sexual harassment and coercion. The evidence is substantial and credible. Over the next hour, they walked Martha through everything. Regina's testimony and documentation. Crystal's journal detailing coercion as an intern. Joni's account of threats related to child custody. The patterns spanning years. Sealed settlements Meridian had paid. HR communications showing corporate knowledge and cover-up. Martha's face went from disbelief to horror to cold fury. 4 women. Years of this. And the company knew. They facilitated it by silencing victims and protecting your husband's position. Terry slid another document across. And there's a current situation involving my client's wife. Chad spoke for the first time. Scott has been having an affair with my wife, Christy Herman, who works under him at Meridian. He's been using the same playbook, promises of leaving his spouse, career advancement tied to compliance, threats when she showed signs of ending it. How long? 6 months that I can document. Possibly longer. Martha's hands trembled, but her voice stayed steady. Show me. Chad opened his laptop, played the security footage from Tuesday. Martha watched her husband enter a stranger's home, heard his voice making promises, issuing subtle threats, the intimacy that spoke of routine rather than impulse. When it ended, Martha stood and walked to the window, her back to them. I suspected over the years. Small signs, late nights, change behavior. But I told myself I was paranoid, that he wouldn't risk our family, our life. She turned, her eyes hard. I was wrong. Mrs. Walker, you need to understand, this isn't just infidelity. Your husband has been committing federal crimes. The EEOC investigation will be public. Media will cover this extensively. Your family's business interests could be affected. The hospital contract, Martha said immediately, her business acumen kicking in. Any scandal involving ethics violations could kill the negotiation. My family's company can't be associated with this. Exactly. Which is why we wanted you informed privately before the complaint becomes public tomorrow. Martha's expression hardened into something fierce. What do you need from me? Honestly? Nothing. The case is solid without you. But if you're willing to cooperate, provide information about Scott's behavior, confirm patterns, perhaps testify about any admissions he's made, it strengthens everything. You'll have my full cooperation. And my attorneys will handle the divorce filing immediately, citing adultery and the prenuptial agreement clause. Martha looked at Chad. Your wife, is she cooperating? She's deciding. But her testimony isn't essential. The pattern is already established with 4 victims. Christy would just be corroboration. Martha nodded slowly. I'll see that Scott is removed from our home tonight. He'll be served with divorce papers and a restraining order before the EEOC complaint drops. Whatever assets he thinks he has access to will be frozen. And I'll make sure every relevant board member at my family's company knows exactly what kind of man he is. You're not trying to protect him, Terry observed. Protect him? He's endangered everything I've built, humiliated me, committed crimes while using my family's name and connections as cover. No, Ms. Greer, I'm not protecting him. I'm excising him from my life like the cancer he is. Martha's eyes were ice. Mr. Herman, I'm sorry for what my husband did to your marriage. If there's anything I can provide to assist your situation, testimony about his patterns, financial documentation, you have it. Thank you. That's more than I expected. Don't thank me. We're both victims of the same predator. The difference is, I have resources to make sure he never recovers. She gathered her belongings. When does this become public? Tomorrow morning. EEOC complaint, victim testimony, media coverage. By noon, it'll be everywhere. Good. He deserves to watch his world burn. Martha paused at the door. Mr. Herman, one question. Did you orchestrate all of this? The legal filing, the timing, my involvement, as revenge? Chad considered. I orchestrated it as justice. Revenge would have been simpler, more violent, less permanent. This is about making sure Scott Walker never has power over anyone again. Martha smiled grimly. Then I hope you succeed completely. After she left, Iris whistled low. That is a formidable woman. Remind me never to cross her. She's protecting her interests and her family, Terry said. But she's also genuinely furious. That combination makes her a powerful ally. Chad closed his laptop. Phase 4 begins tonight. Scott gets served with divorce papers, learns his wife knows everything. Tomorrow morning, the EEOC complaint breaks. By afternoon, Meridian's board will be in crisis mode. And through it all, Scott Walker will understand exactly who caused this and why. What about you? Terry asked. When this is over, where does that leave you? Starting over. Rebuilding. But with the knowledge that I didn't let a predator continue destroying lives. Chad stood. That's enough. He left the office knowing the trap was set. Tomorrow, Scott Walker would wake up to a nightmare of his own creation. And Chad would be there to watch it all unfold. Chapter 7. The Fall. Scott Walker's Thursday began with divorce papers served at 6 a.m. by a courier who waited for his signature. The papers were comprehensive. Adultery cited with specific evidence. Prenuptial agreement invoked. Martha requesting full custody of their children and the majority of marital assets. Attached was a restraining order barring him from the family home and requiring him to maintain distance from Martha and the children. By 6:30, his phone was exploding with calls from Meridian's legal team. The EEOC complaint had been filed electronically at midnight and was now public record. Media outlets were already requesting comment on allegations of systematic sexual harassment and coercion spanning multiple years. By 7 a.m., Scott sat in his car in his own driveway, now forbidden from entering his home, trying to process the coordinated destruction of his life. By 8 a.m., he was in emergency meetings with Meridian's executive team and attorneys, denying everything while they showed him documentation he couldn't refute. For victims, corroborated testimony, HR records proving company knowledge of previous incidents. The evidence was devastating. By 9 a.m., Scott realized who had orchestrated this. The security footage included in Martha's divorce filing showed him entering a home, Chad Herman's home, with Christy. The timestamp proved it was during business hours, showed them together in ways that couldn't be misinterpreted. Chad Herman had built this case, coordinated the timing, weaponized the information. Every piece had fallen exactly when it would cause maximum damage. Scott called Christy. She didn't answer. He texted, "We need to talk. Now." Her response came 5 minutes later. "I've given testimony to the EEOC investigator. I'm cooperating with the case. Don't contact me again." Scott stared at the message, disbelief giving way to fury. Christy had turned on him. Martha had turned on him. His victims had found each other and united against him. And behind it all was Chad Herman, pulling strings like a puppet master. At 11 a.m., Meridian CEO called a board meeting. Scott was summarily suspended pending investigation. His corporate email was disabled, building access revoked, company car confiscated. He was escorted from the building by security while employees watched, whispers spreading like wildfire. By noon, his face was on news websites. Meridian Financial VP accused of serial sexual harassment. The stories included victim testimony, legal expert analysis, speculation about criminal charges. His reputation was eviscerated in real time. At 2 p.m., Scott made his mistake. He drove to Chad Herman's house. Chad was ready. He'd known Scott would come. Men like him, used to control, to power over others, couldn't accept systematic defeat without confrontation. Chad had position cameras, notified Pete to be on standby, and waited. Scott's BMW screeched into the driveway. At 2:17 p.m., he stormed out, rage evident in every movement, and pounded on the front door. Chad opened it calmly. "Scott Walker, I wondered when you'd show up. You destroyed my life." Scott's face was red, veins bulging. "My marriage, my career, my reputation. You systematically destroyed everything." "No, I revealed everything. There's a difference." Chad leaned against the doorframe, completely relaxed. "You destroyed your own life through years of predatory behavior. I just made sure everyone saw it. You manipulated my wife, turned her against me. I showed your wife evidence of your crimes. She made her own decision based on facts. Martha's smarter than you gave her credit for." Scott's hands clenched into fists. "You had no right. I had every right. You brought your affair into my home, manipulated my wife using career coercion, and thought you'd face no consequences. You were wrong. Christy wanted it. She came to me. Christy was a junior employee, and you were her superior. You used that power dynamic, made promises tied to her career advancement, and threatened her job security when she showed signs of resistance. That's not consent, Scott. That's coercion. Federal law is very clear about the difference." Scott stepped forward, threatening. Chad didn't move. "You think you've won?" Scott snarled. "I have lawyers, connections, money." "Had. Past tense. Martha froze your assets this morning per the prenup. Your lawyers dropped you an hour ago when media coverage made you toxic. Your connections at Meridian are protecting themselves by cooperating with investigators." Chad's smile was cold. "You have nothing left but the consequences you earned." "You smug son of a," Scott lunged. Chad was ready. His military training kicked in instantly. He sidestepped, used Scott's momentum against him, and within seconds had him face down on the porch, arm twisted behind his back in a control hold. Not enough to injure, but enough to immobilize completely. "Here's what's going to happen," Chad said calmly, knee in Scott's back. "You going to calm down? Get back in your car and drive away. If you ever contact me, my wife, or any of the women you victimized again, I'll have you charged with harassment, intimidation, and violation of restraining orders. Are we clear? Go to hell." Chad applied slightly more pressure to the arm hold. Not damaging, but painful. "Are we clear?" "Yes," Scott gasped. Chad released him, stepping back smoothly. Scott scrambled to his feet, humiliated and furious. "This isn't over." "Yes, it is. The EEOC investigation will lead to criminal charges. Coercion, abuse of power, possibly fraud. Meridian will settle with victims to avoid prolonged litigation, and those settlements will include testimony about your behavior. Your name is permanently associated with predatory behavior. No company will hire you. No social circle will accept you. You're finished, Scott. I'll fight this. With what money? What reputation? What support system?" Chad's voice was implacable. "You taught your victims that power means control. I taught you that real power is understanding systems and knowing exactly where to apply pressure. You never saw this coming because you were too arrogant to imagine someone smarter and more patient than you." Scott stood there, defeated rage etched on his face. "Why? Why go this far? Because men like you only stop when they're completely destroyed. Anything less, and you'd find a way to hurt someone else." Chad crossed his arms. "Regina Raymond, Crystal Holden, Joni Russo, my wife, you damaged all of them. You used fear and power to make them feel helpless. I'm showing them, and others like them, that predators can be stopped. That justice is possible. You're no hero. You're just as manipulative as you claim I am. I never claimed to be a hero. I'm a man who used skills and resources to stop a predator. If that required manipulation, surveillance, and strategic information warfare, so be it. The difference is my target was someone who deserved it." Scott turned toward his car, then paused. "Christy will never forgive you for this. You destroyed her career, too. Christy's career was destroyed the moment you coerced her into an affair and used her advancement as leverage. I just exposed the truth. What she does with that is her choice." Chad's expression hardened. "Now get off my property. And Scott, remember this feeling, this helplessness, this loss, this understanding that your actions have consequences. Remember it every day for the rest of your life." Scott drove away, tires screeching. Chad watched until the BMW disappeared, then pulled out his phone and texted Pete. Confrontation complete. He's rattled, defeated, and knows exactly who did this. Phase 4 successful. Pete's response: "Criminal charges expected to be filed next week per my contact at the DA's office. Meridian's settling with all 4 victims, substantial amounts, public acknowledgement of failures. You did it, brother." Chad looked at his house, the home he'd shared with Christy, now tainted by betrayal, but also the place where he'd planned and executed perfect justice, where he'd proven that predators could be stopped by someone patient and smart enough to outmaneuver them. Tomorrow, he'd start rebuilding. Tonight, he'd acknowledge that sometimes the only way to stop evil was to be more strategic, more thorough, and more relentless than evil itself. Scott Walker had learned that lesson the hard way. Chapter 8: Aftermath. The news cycle devoured Scott Walker's fall with voracious efficiency. Within a week, the story had evolved from VP accused to mounting evidence to criminal charges filed. The district attorney announced 3 counts of coercion, workplace exploitation, and abuse of power, charges that carried significant prison time if convicted. Meridian Financial faced their own reckoning. The board launched an internal investigation that uncovered not just Scott's behavior, but systematic failures in HR, suppressed complaints, sealed settlements designed to protect executives rather than victims. The CEO resigned. The general counsel was fired. The company paid 7-figure settlements to Regina, Crystal, Joni, and 2 other victims who came forward after the initial complaint became public. Martha Walker moved with surgical precision. The divorce was finalized in record time, thanks to the adultery clause and Scott's inability to contest given the criminal proceedings. She retained the house, custody of the children, and the majority of assets. Scott was left with legal debt and a destroyed reputation. But the most satisfying moment for Chad came 2 weeks after the confrontation, when he received a call from Regina Raymond. "Chad, I wanted to thank you. All of us do. You don't need to thank me. You had the courage to come forward. After years of silence, of thinking we were alone and powerless, you showed us we weren't. More than that, you showed us that predators can be stopped, that justice is possible even when systems fail." Her voice caught. "My career is back on track. Crystal's back in school, free from the trauma that was holding her back. Joni's daughter will grow up knowing her mother fought back. That matters. What you all did, standing together, telling your truth, that's what stopped him. I just coordinated the timing." Regina laughed softly. "You did a lot more than coordinate, and we know it. But I'll let you maintain that fiction if it helps you sleep at night. Just know, you changed lives. Saved future victims. That's worth something." After the call ended, Chad sat in his new apartment. A downtown loft, fresh start, no memories of betrayal. The divorce from Christy was proceeding smoothly. She'd given her testimony, cooperated with investigators, and was slowly rebuilding her career at a different firm. They'd spoken once since everything broke, a conversation that brought closure, if not forgiveness. "I was a victim too," she'd said quietly, "but I also made choices. I betrayed you, lied to you, brought him into our home. The fact that Scott manipulated me doesn't erase my responsibility. No, it doesn't. I don't expect forgiveness. I just want you to know, watching you dismantle him, seeing the way you protected those women, it showed me the kind of person you really are. Strong, strategic, but also principled. I'm sorry I threw that away. We both lost something," Chad had replied. "The difference is, I'll recover. You'll have to live with your choices." Now, looking out over the city lights, Chad reflected on the entire operation. From Dean Fritz's warning to Scott's humiliation on his porch, every move had been calculated, timed, executed with precision. He'd used skills learned in military intelligence, applied them to civilian justice, and achieved complete victory. But it wasn't satisfaction he felt. It was something quieter, the understanding that he'd done what was necessary, that he'd protected future victims, that he'd proven predators weren't invincible. His phone rang. "Pete Gaines. You watching the news?" "Should I be?" "Scott Walker's pleading guilty. His lawyers cut a deal. 3 years in prison, 5 years probation, registry as a sex offender, mandatory counseling. He's done fighting." Chad absorbed the news. 3 years seemed light, but the sex offender registry was lifetime. The probation restrictions meant supervised employment, limited contact with others, permanent stain on his record. Scott Walker would spend the rest of his life defined by his crimes. "He's finished," Chad said. "Completely. Hey, how are you holding up? This whole thing, your marriage, the investigation, confronting him, that's a lot to process." "I'm good. Better than good, actually. For the first time in months, I feel clear. Like I did something that mattered." "You did. Those women have their lives back. Scott's behind bars. The company's implementing real reforms. That's impact, brother." After they hung up, Chad opened his laptop and deleted the encrypted folder labeled Project Accountability. The evidence had served its purpose. The operation was complete. But before closing the laptop, he drafted one final message. An email to Dean Fritz, his neighbor who'd started everything with a simple observation. "Dean, wanted to thank you for your honesty weeks ago. Your warning set in motion events that stopped a predator and protected future victims. Sometimes the smallest acts of courage, speaking up when something seems wrong, have the biggest impact. Thank you for caring enough to say something." Chad. He hit send, then stood and walked to the window. The city sprawled below, millions of lives intersecting, each with their own struggles and victories. Chad Herman had entered this battle as a betrayed husband seeking revenge. He emerged as someone who'd learned that true victory wasn't destruction. It was using power responsibly, protecting the vulnerable, ensuring justice when systems failed. Scott Walker had been a predator who thought his position made him untouchable. He learned otherwise. And Chad had learned that the skills that made him dangerous, strategic thinking, patience, ability to coordinate complex operations, could be used for good. Tomorrow, he'd wake up in his new apartment, go to work, continue rebuilding. But tonight, he'd acknowledge that sometimes the world needed people willing to fight, to plan, to execute justice when no one else would. Scott Walker was finished, and Chad Herman had proven that intelligence, patience, and absolute commitment to justice could defeat even the most entrenched predators. Chapter 9, Resolution. 6 months after Scott Walker's guilty plea, Chad Herman found himself in an unexpected place. A small auditorium where Terry Greer was giving a presentation on workplace harassment law to HR professionals. She'd invited him to attend, saying his perspective might be valuable. What he didn't expect was being called to the stage. "I want to introduce someone who played a crucial role in the Walker case," Terry said, gesturing to Chad. "Not a lawyer, not law enforcement, but a victim's spouse who understood that stopping predators requires strategic thinking, patience, and absolute commitment to justice." Chad walked up reluctantly, uncomfortable with the attention. The audience, mostly HR professionals and corporate attorneys, looked at him with curiosity. "I'm not a hero," Chad began. "I'm someone who used skills from my military intelligence background to stop a man who was destroying lives. But the real heroes are the women who came forward. Regina Raymond, Crystal Holden, Joni Russo, and yes, even my ex-wife Christy. They found courage when systems had failed them." An audience member raised her hand. "What would you say to other companies dealing with similar situations? Stop protecting predators. The NDAs, the sealed settlements, the quiet transfers, they don't solve problems. They just give predators new hunting grounds. When someone reports harassment, investigate thoroughly, believe victims, and act decisively. Because if you don't, someone like me will, and the results will be much worse for everyone involved." Another question: do you regret how far you took it? The public exposure, the systematic destruction of his life. Chad considered carefully. "I regret that it was necessary. But Scott Walker had years to stop, multiple chances to face consequences, and chose to continue victimizing people. Partial measures wouldn't have stopped him. He needed to be completely removed from positions of power. Do I regret ensuring he can never hurt anyone again? No." After the presentation, Regina, Crystal, and Joni approached him in the lobby. "We've started a support network," Regina explained, "for victims of workplace coercion and harassment. Sharing resources, legal contacts, therapeutic support. We're using what happened to help others." "That's incredible. It was your example," Crystal said. "You showed us that fighting back is possible, that predators can be stopped. Now we're paying that forward." Joni added, "We wanted you to know, Scott's case set precedent. 2 other major companies have been investigated using similar frameworks. Victims are coming forward because they saw justice was possible." Chad felt something shift, the cold, tactical approach he'd maintained throughout the operation warming into something more human. "You all did that. I just helped coordinate." "You did more than coordinate," Regina insisted. "You taught us that intelligence, planning, and strategic action can overcome institutional power. That matters." As they left, Chad stood alone in the lobby, reflecting on the journey. From a morning, Dean Fritz warned him to this moment. He'd transformed from a betrayed husband into someone who'd executed perfect justice. His phone buzzed. A text from Martha Walker. They'd stayed in occasional contact, united by shared experience. "Heard you spoke at Terry's seminar. The kids are doing well, adjusting. I've started consulting with companies on executive accountability. Turns out nearly destroying a predator gives you credibility in reform circles. Thank you again for revealing the truth." Chad smiled, responding, "You protected your children and held them accountable. That took strength. Glad you're all moving forward." He walked outside into afternoon sunshine. His life was different now. New apartment, new routines, new understanding of his own capabilities. The betrayal still stung sometimes, but it no longer defined him. What defined him was the knowledge that he'd used skills meant for war to protect people who couldn't protect themselves. That he'd taken the pain of betrayal, and channeled it into systematic justice. That he'd proven predators weren't untouchable. They just hadn't met someone patient and smart enough to outmaneuver them. His phone rang. Pete Gaines. Hey, brother. Got a consulting offer from a security firm. They want someone with strategic planning skills, experience in complex operations. Thought of you immediately. I'm not looking to change jobs. It's not full-time. Contract work, helping companies improve security infrastructure, identifying vulnerabilities. Your analytical mind, your ability to see patterns, it's valuable. Chad considered. Send me the details. After hanging up, he walked toward his car, mind already analyzing the opportunity. Using his skills constructively, helping prevent problems rather than just solving them after the fact. Scott Walker was in prison, serving his sentence. His name was synonymous with predatory behavior. His victims had found justice, support, and the courage to help others. And Chad Herman had learned that sometimes the best revenge wasn't revenge at all. It was justice so complete, so thorough, that the predator's very name became a warning to others. He drove home as the sun set, the city transforming in golden light. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities. But tonight, he'd rest knowing he'd done something that mattered. In his apartment, Chad opened his laptop one final time and wrote a single document. Not for anyone else, just for himself. A record of lessons learned. Victory isn't about destruction. It's about protection. Justice requires patience, planning, and perfect execution. Predators thrive in silence. Exposure is the ultimate weapon. Trust is earned through actions, not words. Sometimes the skills that make you dangerous are exactly what the world needs. He saved the document, closed the laptop, and looked out at the city. Somewhere out there, people were being victimized, manipulated, coerced by those with power. Somewhere, systems were failing to protect the vulnerable. But also somewhere, people were finding courage to speak up, to fight back, to demand justice. Chad Herman had proven it was possible, and that knowledge, that predators could be stopped, that justice could prevail, that one person with skills and determination could change everything.